students of African history at LCSC. I'm Professor Eric Martin, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to do over the course of the next 3 weeks as we approach the very important book by Boahen, African Perspectives on Colonialism. Let's start with the final mission, all right? And you've got a book analysis due on this book late April. It's a 3-page analytical book review, and I want you to use the guidelines below. We've discussed these guidelines previously. These are kind of my standard guidelines for breaking down any kinds of historical documents. They don't work so well with primary sources, but it gets us thinking about things. But this is what separates a book analysis from a book report. Okay? So go through the details on this assignment carefully. Keep in mind that the mission is, as a historian, how does he construct the argument? He could have constructed it a lot of different ways. What did he choose to construct it with? And in the process of this, I've got this kind of a formulaic way to do it, but that's how I want you to do it. First, I want you to talk about the point of the book. What's he trying to do? What's he trying to accomplish with this? What kind of historical controversy or issue or hole is Boahen attempting to address? The second part, what are the sources that he's using? What kind of materials is he using to put this together? Is he in the archives using primary sources? Is he looking at other historians' work, synthesizing? What are his footnotes? How do the chapters fit together in component parts to walk us through an argument? And then how's it connect with the other stuff we've been reading? Okay? And if you pay attention to the Basil Davidson videos that are coming up, he's interviewed in 2 of them, I think. This whole formula ought to sound familiar because we've been using it with the Basil Davidson pieces, okay? But this is, I don't want a book review. I don't need you to tell me what the book says. I'm looking for you to break down the book and tell me how he built the argument and what kind of materials he's using and what you think about that. It's more of a behind the scenes operation. Give me 1 second. You may or may not remember that I've provided you with some guidelines for this stuff. I'm in the modules page here. And when we get to examples of writing assignments, there's a couple of book analyses. One of them's over a piece of fiction. That'll come in handy for you when we get to nervous conditions. But this gives you an idea about what I'm looking for. Also, for those of y'all who don't remember seeing what I'm posting here, all these videos about how to approach some of these topics, right? Let's take a look at it. So this paper, this analysis, that's the big mission. It's an important paper. It's a formal paper. I'm expecting them to be good. I'm expecting them to be polished and clean. And those are due on the 18th of April, so that's like the third week after we come back from spring break. So now let's talk about how we're going to get them good. Okay? Starting the week we come back from spring break, we're going to talk about this book chapter by chapter. It's only 4 chapters, but we're going to do it a little differently. There's going to be a little bit of pressure put on you, and I'm sure you'll respond. We're at that part of the semester. So here's the deal. For 2 weeks, we're going to do 2 chapters. They're fairly short. And if you see your name here, Kalisa, Hannah H., Josh, Cody, Nicole, then you are responsible for making sure that this discussion happens. I encourage the entire class to participate, but in this particular case, these people are responsible for making sure that this document or this chapter is covered in detail. So how are you going to do that? Well, it's the beauty of the discussion boards, right? You guys knew this was coming. It ought to look familiar, but there's some twists, so pay attention. I want you to have an intelligent discussion, and I want that discussion to be based on the guidelines for the review you're going to have to write. That seems to be the most straightforward. You are going to have to write a paper reviewing the entire book. So let's do discussions that review the chapter. Okay. Now here's where some of the twists come, and I'll get to this in a second. I need one detailed posting, 150 words up, right, by the deadline, by Tuesday, to get the conversation kicked off. And I want 2 more, not just 1 more. I want 2 more by the end of the day, Thursday, to keep the conversation moving. And again, these postings should be full of detail, covering the material, leaving no doubt in my mind that you read, but also you getting an opportunity to practice and work out whatever you're going to do for this paper. So, to help you do that, I have created 4 discussion threads, lo and behold, based exactly on the major sections of the analysis that you're going to be required to do for the entire book. So, for the first chapter, let's break it down. That we'll have a thread on what's the author's point in writing the book. We'll have a thread on what are the sources that the author uses. We'll have a thread that'll be the longest part. What's the chapter actually about? How does he break it down, and what's he trying to do with the chapter? That's going to be the longest part. That's going to be the one with the most postings in it. And then the final part, it's a little bit like grand conclusions, right? Comparing and contrasting what you see in the book to other stuff. Now, for the students who are required to make this discussion happen, and even for those of y'all who just decide to join in, there's no reason to make a posting that somebody else has already said, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There could be lots of things that somebody misses when they write, this is the reason he wrote it, right? But if you're going to add to that, hey, here's these other elements that you missed, right? So we're going to do this like it's a classroom conversation where you don't just repeat what happened, what the person who just spoke says, right? I'm sure you guys can do this because you did it with the Atlantic history slave trade documents. I just reduced the number of people to get these postings up to a little higher level. So in this particular case, Kalisa, Hannah, Josh, Cody, and Nicole will make this conversation happen by the end of the deadline. And then we'll have a nice set of postings on chapter 1. We'll do the same thing with chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. Easy enough? All right. The only real twist, well, you know what? I'm not even going to deal with the twist. Let me so we're going to do that again for part 2. These are the folks that are going to lead that conversation. Everybody is encouraged to participate for extra credit. These folks are being more formally graded on their participation. Then we'll do the same thing the week after that. And then when we get to the week after that, week 13, which starts April 15th, you're going to get a little bit of a breather to write your paper. We'll throw a Basil Davidson video in here. All right. So those of y'all who are going to be responsible for getting that kicked off, take note. I wanted to get to that one because Boahen's in that video. And so I think that would be a useful one for y'all to see. And then you submit your book analysis. If you have any questions about it, let me know. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the week after this, we're going to be talking about a piece of fiction, Nervous Conditions. You should already have it for certain. It's a good spring break read. I don't know when you're watching this, but it's a good spring break read. So, whoa. There we go. So, that's the deal. That's getting us pretty close to moving towards the end. If you got any questions, let me know. And enjoy your historical studies.